For this video, let's dig a little bit deeper into individual student data and look at 4 individual students that come from each one of these categories. So let's start with a student who actually we saw exceeded their grade level. What does that look like? So we're going to go to Fisk Johnson. So again, we can quickly see that Fisk is a 10th grader reading at 7th grade level, and we can see that our data triangulated with your reading data, and to say that yes, we believe that Fisk can read independently at a 7th grade level. And then what we want to do is just go across at grade level and see that both the human audio and the text reader categories, that Fisk was very independent with both of those conditions. Now, what we do notice stepping back and looking is that in the situation of the human audio, Fisk was able to actually comprehend at 1 grade level above. And that wasn't quite true with his text reader condition. So what this means for Fisk is that he has the choice of a reading accommodation, either human audio and text reader, but he seems to actually be able to handle some harder text with human audio. Now that skill might change the more he's using a text reader. We often see that at a first glance, data looks like this, and then we come back to UPAR, and that text reader column just goes right up there. But for right now, if Fisk is really trying some really, really hard text, he might need to start with his human audio while he's building his text reader skills. Let's look at a different student, Carrie. Carrie falls in this category that the reading accommodation helped her get to grade level. Carrie's data looks a lot more complicated, but it's really not. The first thing we notice is Carrie is a 10th grader reading at a 5th grade level. Now, our data, and on the day of this protocol, she didn't do so well at that. We would call that frustration. That text showing up below is just the name of the passage she read. It could have just been a bad day for Carrie. Oftentimes I'll check in with my students and see how they're doing. And sometimes, our reading data is just a little bit off. So it could be a myriad of different things. So what we did is, again, looking at grade level, if we look at the student's grade level, we can quickly see that the text reader was the area that really supported Carrie in getting to grade level. So we would say, based on Carrie's data, that a text reader would be her strongest support in terms of an accommodation to give her access to grade level materials. Again, what does that mean? If it's a text reader, we need digital text for Carrie, and we need to make sure we're offering her materials at her grade level instead of modifying and lowering the rigor of those materials. Now we'll look at Manny. Manny fell in, or actually we're going to go to Mallory first. Mallory fell in the category of she did better. She was above her reading level, but she didn't quite get to grade level. So let's look at Mallory's data. Again, I just click on Mallory and I can see that she's a 10th grader, again, reading at a 5th grade level. Our data kind of triangulated with your data and said that she was maybe more instructional. If we go to grade level and shoot across, we can see that she wasn't independent in either of those. But again, looking for our area of green, we see that she was pretty independent at the 9th grade level, which is pretty close. This is going to be her strength area. We can see that this would definitely help Mallory. It gives her still even a 4 grade level difference over her independence, so that's still very significant. And maybe with more time and practice, she can actually even get to grade level. So again, for Mallory, her best mode would be a text reader. We would want to make sure that she has more opportunity to practice that and get comfortable with that. We would make sure that her test and her instructional materials are available in a digital format so she can use her text reader. And finally, let's look at Manny. Manny fell in the category of what we call didn't benefit at this time. So what we see in Manny's data is he's a 10th grader reading at an 8th grade level. He's 2 grade levels behind. He did really well silently reading, and he was very independent with that. And you can see when we went to grade level, while he did instructionally okay, and so that might give us a reason to start trying to use some of these accommodations, he wasn't as independent. And so again, Manny's a kind of a tough one because you can see he's a strong reader at his 8th grade level. We can work on these accommodations, but at this time, they don't give enough benefit for him to, really use an accommodation over his silent reading. So the recommendation for Manny would be to continue to read silently and use that independence, But to try maybe building some skills in the text reader so we can make that grade level gap, we're not far off from getting him to be a little bit independent with a text reader. And that's how you can interpret different students' data. Again, there's so many different variations with so many different students. What's so nice, though, is that we can make these individual decisions about each individual student and then repoke them later and see how things have changed.